Here, I don't have anything against ChatGPT or AI or anything. It has its uses, absolutely. If you aren't a natural born writer, for me it's easy because I write 40 hours a week. You know, it's something that I enjoy. It's something that I've always been good at, and the rest of my team are as well. And for a lot of people, getting that first draft, just staring at that blinking cursor is enough to make them want to just run out the door.
Welcome to today's episode of the E-Commerce Revolution Podcast, where we dive into the dynamic world of e-commerce and uncover the tools and tactics that empower today's emerging entrepreneurs. Our podcast is part of our community with the same name. The community is geared to providing emerging e-commerce entrepreneurs with courses, content, and coaching to help you all launch and grow successful businesses. Check us out at ecomrevolution.co. Let's get things started. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are here today to discuss content creation for e-commerce businesses. So back in the day, it used to be easy, right? You'd either learn how to write your own content from your site copy to your blogs, or you would hire an agency or a freelancer. But that all changed on November 30th, 2022. That's the day OpenAI's ChatGPT launched, and all of a sudden, entrepreneurs across the land had a friend in, technically a virtual one, in the business of content creation. But is using AI tools like Claude or ChatGPT the best long-term approach for your content creation? Is the human writer still an essential part of content creation? We are going to dig deep into this topic, and it's a very important topic and one that I feel very passionate about. I think we have gotten to a place where we are feeling we're like we can just click some buttons and content is created, and that's not actually the case. I'm thrilled today to welcome Abby Wood to our podcast. Abby is a seasoned content strategist and copywriter and started her journey way back in 2012. She co-founded a full-service e-commerce agency before discovering her true passion of content strategy and copywriting. In 2019, Abby founded the Content Lab, which specializes in creating human-first copy. Remember those words, human-first copy, and content that connects and converts. Her work has earned her accolades like Ireland's Best Young Entrepreneur, and she now leads a talented team of 8 writers and editors based in Ireland. Beyond her agency work, Abby also mentors digital agency owners through UGurus, which is where I met Abby. So, without any further ado, please welcome Abby Wood to the E-Commerce Revolution Podcast. Abby, it is great to have you here.
What an introduction. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very, and I will say that personally, from a personal standpoint, I will say that your work and the work that your team does is absolutely amazing. And there were so many situations when you were doing work for us and creating content for our agency that I would read the content. I'm like, how do they know us so well? How do they understand us? We barely know ourselves that well. So it is a true talent to be able to write. And I think, our topic today is it's an important one. And I think before the show we discussed how important not just clicking some buttons and getting your content, but actually having that human first approach. So did I get everything right? Did I get your whole bio in there? Is there anything you'd like to add? Okay, good.
No, perfect. Absolutely perfect. What an introduction.
Good. Well, thank you so much. So, are you ready to dive into this exciting, maybe slightly controversial topic? I don't know why it would be controversial, but maybe it's getting a little because everybody feels that they can click those buttons, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And I am more than ready. I am super excited. This is going to be great.
Great. Very nice. Well, you mentioned in your intake notes that e-commerce companies investing in high quality and unique content will stand out as AI-generated content becomes more prevalent. So can you expand on that, and maybe tell us, the why behind that and what you see happening right now or maybe even a year ago versus what's happening right now that can help emerging e-commerce entrepreneurs, craft their approach to content creation?
Absolutely. I think that we're going to see more and more AI generated content, from the school kids creating their essays using it, and kind of anyone and everyone and their dog is now able to use ChatGPT and the other likes, the LLMs. But yeah, and with such a proliferation of a huge amount of kind of blah content, it's very it's lacking passion, it's lacking uniqueness, it's lacking
Right.
the human touch. It's going to get more and more difficult to stand out, I think. So yeah, I think going forward, the brands that are going to do really well are the ones that really invest in their own brand and their own brand personality, and embracing their uniqueness and bringing that out from social media posts to website copy to kind of thanks for your order messages. It needs to be infused into every single touch point that a customer has with our brands, and yeah, I think that's going to be the future of content that performs.
So what do you say to an entrepreneur out there that has discovered Claude or ChatGPT or any of the others out there that says, well, yeah, Abby, it was amazing. I typed in a few things into ChatGPT and it understood my brand really well. Why can't it create blog content for me then if it understands my brand? Well, what do you have to say about that?
First of all, congratulations. You've just found an amazing tool to speed up your workday.
Yeah.
Here, I don't have anything against ChatGPT or AI or anything. It has its uses, absolutely. If you aren't a natural born writer, for me it's easy because I write 40 hours a week. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that I've always been good at, and the rest of my team are as well. And for a lot of people, getting that first draft, just staring at that blinking cursor is enough to make them want to just run out the door. So AI is fantastic for getting something on the page, but if you don't train it in your voice, if and even sometimes when you do, somebody could put in the exact same text that you put in and generate the exact same output. So although you may feel it's creating text that is in your brand voice, it's not. So whenever somebody has something that is AI generated, I always recommend them to, one, read it out loud and see, does this actually flow naturally? Is this a natural speech pattern that is coming through in this? And that's the same for website text. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that website text needs to be formal and super professional, and sometimes it does, absolutely. If that's your brand voice, 100% lean into that. But especially in e-commerce, a lot of e-commerce companies, they're a little bit quirkier. They may have like certain products that are a little bit out there, kind of lean into that. Lean into what makes you unique. So it's a great way of getting down some general ideas and the first draft. So if you are writing a website, it's a great way of getting some ideas, like a layout of the actual page. If it's not something that you're used to doing, like writing a home page or writing an about page, it's a great way of getting the general gist of what needs to go on those pages. But you're not doing your company, you're doing your company an injustice, because what makes you unique and what makes you stand out and what connects you with the people that want to buy from you is you. It's your uniqueness. It's what makes you completely different than everyone else. And a lot of AI generated text tends to be very, very samey. I mean, you can give it feedback, it can learn, it does kind of adapt, but it will never be able to completely emulate how you speak. So yeah, as I was saying, my number one tip is to read it out aloud. And then my second tip is to consider standing in front of, and we're imagining standing in front of our ideal customer here. We're definitely not doing it in real life. But imagine your ideal customer, your favorite customer, and imagine reading that piece of work out to them. And does it actually talk to them like they're a person? Does it address their pain points? Does it sell the benefits of your product? Or does it say, you can elevate your online presence with this little piece of technology, or, kind of unleash the power of your living room furniture with this rug? Nobody that's not going to appeal to anybody. Just kind of, in my agency, we actually have a list of do not use words now, because they're so overused with AI. So unleash, kind of empower, revolutionize. All of they're fantastic words. Don't get me wrong, but the minute that the consumer sees them, they go, "That's AI generated," because people are more tech savvy than ever. And I think it can do damage to your brand, I know for me, if I'm scrolling through Instagram Reels or Facebook or whatever, and, an obviously AI generated advert pops up telling me, I can unleash the true potential in, my dining room with their sale. Instantly, I'm like, you didn't put any effort into that ad. That doesn't speak to me. That doesn't speak to anyone, So,
Right.
yeah, it's all about knowing your audience and knowing who you are as a brand as well, I think, and connecting the two.
I love that. That's a great way of saying, especially getting up and, addressing your buyer persona or your ideal customer or client profile, looking them in the, in the eye. I know, no, we're not really doing it, but just, that experience, I think, really puts people in a position of challenging the content they received, wherever they got the content from, right?
Mm-hmm,
Whether
absolutely.
it's, AI or they hired somebody to do it, to make sure that, do you feel comfortable? Is that coming from you, the brand owner or the founder, and in many cases, the emerging e-commerce entrepreneur is everything. A founder, the brand manager, they are everything in their business. That's a great exercise, and one that I will absolutely utilize myself. I think it really puts you, it forces you to look at that content instead of copying and pasting, right? And just saying, oh, great,
Yep.
it's perfect. I'm just going to put it up there. All right,
Yep.
very good. I love that. Okay, so I one thing that stood out, in your intake notes were fantastic. You are a great writer. You wrote fantastic intake notes. You use the term human first approach, and I love this. This is, I always, when I see that entrepreneurs are using AI a lot, and again, I'm not, I encourage them to use whatever tools they need to use, but I talk about, the human in the loop. Keep the human in the loop. You cannot be the click and copy and paste and be done with it. So in terms of that human first approach that you instill within agency, what does that mean in practice, and how can e-commerce entrepreneurs apply this principle to their own content? What can they do, knowing that they probably will dabble in a little AI?
I have no doubt, and I think that you should dabble, try it on, see if it works for you. I think that for many people it really helps them, and it definitely as I said, gets rid of that, oh no, I can't think of anything to say, fear for a lot of people that aren't trained writers or anything like that. But in general, human first copy, I think, is the future. So, we're not writing for machines. SEO is very important. Google search algorithms, super important. Yeah, absolutely. But even if we look back at the helpful content update back in March 2024, Google is actively promoting helpful content. So it is the content that readers, buyers, whatever lands on your site, interacts with and converts with. So the longer somebody is on your site, the more respected it is in Google's eyes and all the other search engines that we all forget their names because Google dominates the whole thing.
Right.
But yeah, human first, I think, is definitely the future. So we're speaking directly to our reader. We're speaking to one reader as well. So it is you. You are looking for this. You want to achieve this. I'm a big fan of Storybrand by Donald Miller, which very much positions the reader as the hero on their buying journey, and we are their sage and guide to get them to the product that is best for them. I see a lot of e-commerce companies that suffer a little bit from we-itis. So it's, we sell this, we do that, and
Yeah.
it's tempting, our websites
Sure.
are our babies for a lot of us, but it's all about the reader, and that's the basic proponents of human first copy. We're aiming to connect with our ideal target audience. We're filtering out bad fits. So I know in e-commerce that's a bit different, you know, kind of we want people that are buying from us and hopefully not returning. So maybe it's the serial buyer and returners that we're trying to dissuade from buying from us. But yeah, that's human first. It is writing directly to the reader. SEO, of course, super important. We want those keywords in the headings, in the H1s, the H2s, the H3s, and meta titles and descriptions. I may be speaking double Dutch to some people listening, but all
It's
super
okay.
important stuff.
We'll put links. We'll put links in the show notes that will guide in that direction. You know, that's an interesting concept there. That I always look at a website, and you know, in this case, I know we're talking about e-commerce. You, the owner of the site, or whoever is in charge of laying it all out and putting it together, you're almost like flight control. You know, you need to direct people where to go, and a lot of times I lean on call to actions, but I like this idea. Content, whether it be short or long form content, really needs to guide people in these directions. And how can AI possibly know where to guide somebody, right? How can it possibly know that? It is the human being, the one who's in charge of the site, the one who is in the site each and every day, that really knows where to send that ideal customer on their buying journey.
Very true, and I think that it's often overlooked. The layout of a page is incredibly important, and even if you are using AI to create, say, your homepage content, kind of the AI machine isn't going to understand that your bestseller is this product, this product, this product. So you may say, hey, we sell these types of categories of products, but it's not going to know what to feature. It's not going to know that, kind of we are now in January and we're ramping up for an Easter sale, so it's just, AI is fantastic for getting the bare bones down. Everything needs a human touch. And people buy from brands that they know, like, and trust. And a big part of that is bringing in the human side. Now, obviously, kind of if you're a multinational, kind of e-commerce agency, it's a little bit, it's an e-commerce store, sorry, it's a little bit different, bringing in personal stories. Some brands really lean into it. I'm a big fan of Innocence drinks. They're big in Ireland. They really lean into their personality, their, kind of their team. And I mean, they're in multiple countries across the world. So it doesn't just have to be kind of the local mom and pop shops that are really leaning into that human storytelling side. People buy when they truly believe a product is going to make their life better.
Yeah. Storytelling. Again, another phrase that I think is so important. I think that in many ways, e-commerce companies almost have to be media companies these days, right? The amount of content, whether it's the on-site content or the off-site content that you're creating, but that storytelling portion of it, and again, this is an area where a human being does this obviously much, much better than any AI could at this very moment. I don't know, who knows what 5 years looks like, 10 years from now, but I still think I hope we're still relevant, at the end of the day. I hope we still remain relevant in this process, but that ability to tell the story of the brand or the story of the product, is so important to this idea of a media company or being a media company. But that blinking, that blinking cursor that you mentioned, that's something I go through a lot. I do not consider myself a great writer, so I have to challenge myself. And a lot of times I'm staring at a blinking cursor. And you mentioned, again, this is where maybe AI can be helping, where to get you that start, get started in that storytelling process. Do any of your clients, do they come to you with existing content that you look at and you're like, oh, this has all been done via AI?
I love all of my clients. I love all of them. But yeah, we do have a couple, and they're like, hey, I wrote this. And I'm like, did you use AI? You did, didn't you? Yeah, I just spun it out. I didn't even really read it before sending over. I'm like, I can tell. Come on.
Right.
Yeah, so I've noticed quite a few people will be sending briefs to their creatives now using AI. So please check them. Please check them before, kind of sending them over to your copywriter or your designer or anything. I think it's going to get... I love people, but we're getting lazier as a species. Okay,
We are.
we really
Absolutely.
are. We really are.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think because it has this reputation of being the easier way to do things, kind of, write a brief for my writer to create, a series of social media ads around this product. And then it'll spit it out, you send it over, but you're missing the core elements of what those ads need to speak about. You may have completely factually incorrect stuff in there. So if you are a manufacturer of a really unique product, AI can't speak about what makes that unique, or kind of if you have like an artisan product that has been sourced in a certain country and is kind of you've absorbed your own heritage into it, and it's got this beautiful backstory that is the main selling point of the product. AI can't do that for you. That's got to come from you. Absolutely. But writer's block hits us all. Absolutely. I still get writer's block. I've been doing this too many years to count what it feels like. And yeah, sometimes I find there are a lot of different ways that you can approach writer's block. My team always laugh because one of my favorite ones is to take a shower, and it's like, Abby, you can't take more than one shower in a day, okay? So if you're really stuck, try taking a shower. Even just changing rooms, going for a walk, whatever it is to kind of change where your brain is. And sometimes use AI to just be like, hey, give me 5 points that I should mention in this piece about this. But AI can't understand motivation. Right. It can't understand human psychology yet. It's not there yet. Kind of in 2 years' time, who knows? In 6 months' time, who knows? But right now, it can't understand the strategy behind it. And humans can. We understand each other, and we understand, kind of what motivates someone. To kind of create a product, to want to be an entrepreneur, and kind of really go out there and change the world in their own way. So I think it's missing the human touch, and I'm kind of grateful. I like the human non-human kind of approach.
Yeah, no, I think that's and I feel as far as we go in one direction, we tend to always come back to the roots. And you see platforms like Substack and Beehive, and these aren't necessarily platforms that are going to necessarily help e-commerce entrepreneurs, or maybe they would. But people are going back to the roots of writing. Now, hopefully most of what we're seeing on Substack and Beehive are actually written by human beings. But I think that speaks to the desire of a real human approach to stay there, right? Because we're also told we need to move fast. And when we're moving fast, then we are clicking buttons, and we are grabbing that AI generated content and just plugging it in there, and not even taking that example that you mentioned of standing in front of a mirror and imagining or just envisioning your ideal customer profile on the other end, and how would they receive that content. So I'm hopeful that with all this technology, that we do continue to always come back to the process of storytelling, of being involved as a human being involved in the process.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of, now I know, kind of in capitalist society, it's a little bit different, kind of we have to move fast and stuff. There is a movement, slow web movement. It's all about quality over quantity. It's, kind of genuinely helping people, creating content that, because we're so inundated with constant advertising and content to consume, and whether it is reels or whether it is ads or whatever, I'm a big fan of that idea. Now, I don't know will it work in kind of reality, but I do like that idea of creating content that actually means something and connects with the person that you're looking to connect with. And I think that's what we always come back to. Like, technology is always designed to make our lives better, but we always come back to humans need human contact. There's been plenty of studies around, kind of the effects of social media and, isolation, all this kind of stuff. And I think a great way of, ranking better online and selling more things is to really lean into that. So, there are great e-commerce companies that are really leaning into, we're a small kind of factory in, you know, there's one I like called Sassy Spud, and they do a really unique kind of quirky, aimed at millennials, hello millennial here, you know, like meme t-shirts and just really like funny stuff, but everything that they do is very human. So, you know, kind of all of their messaging is very human, and you know, kind of I ordered one of my friends a t-shirt from them, and you know, kind of they emailed me, and it was obviously a handwritten email because it was very personal, which you don't get very often. Now, can they scale at that? I don't know, but they're doing very well as a company, you know. I really like that. I think for certain consumers as well, they really like the more personal touch, because we're so used to quite an impersonal approach to e-commerce, and I think by connecting more, you can sell more. You know, when it boils down to it, that's you know, kind of what we're aiming to do.
and somewhere in there's an entrepreneur thinking about that human touch and how to scale that, and that's where I think that we need to just slow down a little bit, you know, and take a look. You know, you mentioned sending out a card or an email to customers. What a novel approach, especially, you know, if you're a small brand, you know, that you know, again, that counts as you know, content for your brand, to take that time, and even if you have it somewhat templatized, you know, a portion of it, and then you add in the first part of it, it just, these days, it speaks volumes. Coming from a brand, you're shocked, right? You're absolutely blown away.
Like, wow,
just like you were.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, wow, there's a human being on the other end creating some content, and they seem to care about me as a customer, and they seem to want me. Of course you're going to go back to that brand. Of course you're bringing this onto the podcast to talk about it. So that experience, you know, was, you know, important enough. You mentioned a human, a slow, what was the terminology?
Web movement, yeah.
Slow web movement.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's fascinating. I'm a bit of an idealist. I would love kind of, you know, the content to be created is more curated, and there's less content but better quality. You know, kind of my company is a big fan of that approach anyway. But yeah, I think, and you know, for those of you that are just getting into e-commerce, you know, even, I don't know kind of how big you are or anything, but like I personally love it when you're unboxing an order and you get like a note from the person that packed it. You know, like these little touches. I'm going to be a lot more loyal to a brand that seems to care about me than, you know, kind of if I get something and it arrives in like a black plastic bag. You know, it's just, yeah, I think the touch points are a lot more important for e-commerce, especially when it's so competitive, because most e-commerce companies are competing with the likes of Amazon or, you know, kind of the big, you know, multinational, international players. So it is very competitive. And how do you not compete on price? It's unique selling points. It is, you know, building up a brand authority and loyalty from buyers.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I was on the brand in the United States called On Cloud, right? The footwear company. And I went on there because the founder, or co-founders, was on a podcast that I love to follow called How I Built This. And they were doing storytelling, you know, on that, you know, that podcast is all about storytelling. So he was telling the story of the brand, and I did not know the story of the brand. I didn't know where these guys came from. But then I went to the website, and it is all about that. It is that you know, slower approach, very human, you know, approach. They know their customer really well. They're speaking to their customer. Every portion of the content on their site is absolutely well laid out. They clearly went through that exercise of really, you know, are we speaking to our buyer? And honestly, I was not a buyer yet, but I want to be a buyer after reading that, right? I want to be in there. You know?
And that's what good copywriting is. That is what good content is. You know, kind of, even if you are speaking to a very set target audience, you might end up, you know, attracting people that just really like your approach, you know, kind of I think it's a good way of standing out. And as, you know, it's so easy to drum up a website, you know, kind of in a couple of hours and, you know, to launch a brand within a couple of hours now, you know, to really stand out, you're going to have to be more unique. You're going to have to be more you. And I think we're not meant to serve everyone. You
Right.
know, kind of
Right.
our products don't, you know, appeal to everyone. Like if you sell a certain type of shoe, not everybody's going to want to sell said wear said shoe.
Right.
But really leaning into the type of people that want to really align themselves with you and your brand. You know, people buy from companies that they know, like, and trust, and part of that is the story behind why you do what
Yeah.
you do.
So everybody out there, slow down, slow down and take that time to create really good content for your site, from, homepage content to product descriptions. Yes, if you need a little help, you need a little boost from, AI, go get that boost, but be the human in this, be in charge of your own content and make sure that the content you're creating is geared towards the audience on the other end. And when they read it, they either become a customer or they are just further fortified that they made the right decision to be a customer.
Absolutely.
I think it's great. Well, let's talk about, because obviously Google still, dominates the landscape and kind of essentially in many ways tells us what to do when it comes to content, or in a roundabout kind of way. Let's talk about this human content versus AI content as it relates to rankings. And I know Google has specifically come out and said, they don't take a position. I mean, they have their own AI, right? So it's a little hard to take a position. But, they say those, I think the quote on their site was, those seeking success in Google's search should be looking to produce original, high quality, people-first content demonstrating qualities of EEAT, which stands for expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. What is your take, just on that alone? I mean, they're not coming out either way. I don't think they're, but I think, if we look at through the lines, high-quality, people-first content, that plays into what you've been saying. What do you how do you
Google,
dissect that?
for agreeing with me.
Exactly.
I think definitely at the base of it, Google is a company. They want to keep people using their platform and they want to keep their users happy so they keep making money. And if they actively promoted kind of spammy content that didn't really help, people are eventually going to be like, why would I use Google? It just takes me to like these rubbish sites. I don't get the information I need. It takes me to scammers, it takes me to spammers, whatever. So they will eventually, I know it's hard to imagine anybody, kind of leaving Google for that reason, but that's always in the back of Google's mind. So they want to keep their users happy. And by keeping the users happy, it's unique content. It is, and they don't have an issue with AI generated content in per se. They have an issue with AI generated content at scale. So it's not even checked by humans. Like if you published 200 pages in one day, they're going to go, how did you do that? Like what is
impossible.
That?
Right.
In fact, I read an interesting Reddit thread this morning of somebody, one of the SEOs on the SEO Reddit thread, saying that his site has just got penalized, and people were saying, well, what did you recently change? And he's like, oh, I published like 1,000 service pages overnight.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
and it's
gosh.
like, what do you expect?
I mean, I feel like that's just, should be in many ways common knowledge. Who can do that? That's just not even humanly possible, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Google is happy for you to use AI as long as you're putting humanity into it. You're putting your humanness, like you're putting your expertise, your authority, your trustworthiness, everything in there. They're a big fan, and I know they never come out and say this, but you always read between the lines with the Google gods, kind of,
Yeah.
they have, you can, if you're working in this industry, you get a good feel for what does work and what doesn't work. So you have kind of your SEO basics of, you need keyword research. You need, very specific keywords that are relevant to what people are going to be searching for, and is relevant to your industry and what you're writing about. There's places where you put that on the page, like, your headings and in the first 100 words and in your meta description and all this kind of stuff. But generally speaking, once you have those basics done, Google just really wants content that somebody is going to land on their page, stay to read it, and eventually convert. and then the Google user is happy. And that's basically what it boils down to. So I wouldn't get hung up on, oh, you need a keyword density of 20 keywords per 120 words. That's not going to work. But yeah, I think human first, put your own spin on stuff, and just, it's easier said than done, especially for people that are just setting up companies or, looking to grow quite quickly. Hire someone to do it for you. Get someone on your team that is, either a natural wordsmith or, whatever that looks like. But make sure that you put the time and the effort in, because it's part of your sales toolkit. It is important. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, tell me, so if I coming to your agency, do I come with my keywords already done, or do you guys handle that as well? I mean, you kind of have to play then in two worlds. You have to play the SEO strategist in some ways and the content creator in some ways. What does the approach look like these days?
So it's an art and a science, I always say. So the science is the SEO stuff of checklist of I need this, 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 and this. And then the art is the art of persuasion and, great writing skills and all this kind of stuff. So you definitely want to marry the two. You need to take care of SEO, and you need to take care of the actual human reader as well. So you want to keep both sides of the equation happy. For my agency, some of our clients come with keyword research already done. Most of them don't. So we use a tool called Surfer SEO. If anybody is interested in optimizing their stuff or researching, we also use SEO ranking as well for the keyword research itself. Highly recommend both, and they're both pretty affordable as well. If you're on a shoestring budget right now and just trying to get stuff up and running, they're great options. So yeah, we tend to get a mix. We always supplement it. If somebody does provide their own keyword research, we'll always, double down and do our own, and because we have set processes, and like any good digital agency, you have your way of doing things that has been tried, tested, and proven. But yeah, well, I'm a big fan of working with the client as well. So, if they have something in mind that they want, then we'll advise them on best practice and what we feel would be best for their brand, and delivering what they want at the end of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I when I was reading, when I was on that site on Claude's site, I didn't necessarily feel that they were pushing, an SEO strategy in their content. They were writing human first content. They were really focusing in on, pulling me in and telling me the story of their brand. And I think that speaks to what you just said a minute ago, is that, don't get hung up on these technicalities, right? Really just put out good content. Pay attention, have a balance maybe between the two, use some of these tools to just see where you can plug in, but don't because sometimes you see a keyword that it doesn't fit perfectly,
it's
right?
Like it's been stuck in the middle of a sentence.
Yes,
it's like,
exactly. I get that question a lot. Ramin, the keyword doesn't sound, it doesn't flow with my sentence, or it doesn't flow with my title. Should I still use it? And, the answer is, no, don't shove it in there. That's not the purpose of what we're talking about. We're, again, still talking about writing this human, approach. And, I think that's, what you're hammering home. Tools are great. Use them, find them, but strike a balance.
Absolutely. And I think with keywords, it's really easy to be like, oh, I need to put like my main keyword right here front and center. And yeah, you want it in your heading 1 and stuff. But the thing that I'm a big fan of with keyword placement and stuff, I know we're getting into the nitty gritty of keyword placement and stuff. So bear with me, guys.
Yeah.
Is when you're writing genuinely helpful content, the keywords are hit naturally. You might need to massage it a little bit. But say if I was trying to sell lawnmower pieces to hotels, pull that out of thin air right there.
Yeah.
But say I was trying to sell that, what's your heading going to be? It's going to be exactly that. It's going to be,
right.
The key phrase, because that's what they're searching for. You're saying exactly what you sell and who you sell it for. And then you can get into the, hey, do you need to stock up on supplies because, your previous supplier has, let you down a few times, or, you just need to, whatever. But yeah, you can definitely hit them naturally. I think a lot of people tend to get a little bit too hung up on keyword placement, and you can always use adjacent keywords. It doesn't, for the love of everything, don't keep using the same keyword in every single thing. You want to mix it up a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
And make sure it's relevant. Make sure it's relevant to what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now tell me. So let's say we'll play the role. I'm an emerging e-commerce entrepreneur. I have my brand idea. I've sourced my products. I'm probably picking Shopify because that's what everybody picks these days. And I'm going to start building my store. But I know that I need to fill in the blanks with the content. Where do I focus? Do I put my attention on product descriptions? Should I put my attention on immediately creating, a bank of blog posts? Or do I need to focus on my homepage content or my category or everything? I mean, where do I start as a content strategy? Because I don't have the time to do everything. So I need help. I need to know where to start.
Yeah, definitely phase it. For sure. You want to break it up into doable chunks. Content strategy is an ever evolving part of owning a website. So a website is never done, kind of that like good old cliche phrase. It's true. It's never completely complete. There we go. But I would say it depends on your marketing strategy as well. So if you are going to invest heavily in paid ads, organic SEO can maybe be pushed a little bit further down the line. You don't want to be, the problem with paid ads is once you pull the budget, then your website is just like, okay, I'm here. Nobody's going to visit me because they don't know I exist. So you want to be working on both at the same time. But if you are brand new, just looking to launch the website, homepage, 100%. That is where most of your traffic is going to land. Simple as. So homepage needs to be chef's kiss, perfect, needs to be, kind of exactly why you're the best, what products you sell, your backstory, all of this kind of stuff. Generally speaking, the about page is next on the to-do list, which is surprising. A lot of, if you are brand new, people are looking for proof points. They want to see who's behind the name, because I think consumers are so used to there being a lot of scam websites, kind of selling stuff that isn't what is promised, or just not even, they want to make sure that you either have an actual location, or, kind of there's a picture of your founder, or, kind of whatever that looks like. Just get that proof point in there. Now, the about page for e-commerce companies, luckily, doesn't have to be, four novels long. We're just looking at proof points. That's it. So, if you have testimonials, pop them up. If you have reviews, pop them up. If you want to put an about the founder section, put it up. I know it's not for everyone. But again, it depends on kind of your positioning as a company as well. Then, depending on how many products you have, in an ideal world, every single product would have a very unique description and would have, kind of all the specs written down, and it would have your reviews on there from people that bought it. You'd have videos of the product in action. You'd have photos of it from different angles and in use and all this kind of thing. If you have an e-commerce store that you're setting up with 10,000 products, that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. You're most likely going to be using supplied images and text and stuff. And that's fine to get started with. Absolutely fine. Once you've figured out your best sellers, then you can put your time and energy and effort into really honing in on making those fantastic and then getting organic traffic from that. So yeah, I would say blogs are super important. A little bit more difficult with e-commerce companies in general, just because if you're seasonal, so if it's clothing or something, fashion changes, quite quickly. So it can be difficult to blog for those type of companies. If you're really leaning into, the people first, you could do meet our team member blog posts. You can do, kind of backstory, or, kind of the history of this or whatever. But yeah, to summarize me going off on a bit of a tangent there, homepage, about page, blogs in the background, some best practice for blogs as well. Make sure they're unique. They're at least 1,000 words long. The reason behind that is Google likes content that is helpful, and a 500-word blog doesn't tend to, kind of deep dive into anything. And yeah, I think those would be my main focus. If I was setting up a brand new e-commerce store, homepage, about page, if you have 1 or 2 products or up to 10, or you have, how many of our hours in the day that you can dedicate to it, or a team member that you can hand it off to, product pages as well. And don't forget those little touch points of, kind of order confirmation and, kind of abandoned checkout emails and that kind of thing. A little bit of personalization goes a long way.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That about page, or about us page, I had a client yesterday that I was speaking to, and we were just looking at her 2024 numbers and looking back to see how she did, and she told me, she goes, Ramin, my about page is showing up as like the 3rd highest trafficked page on my site, and it came a bit as a shock to her, and I thought, well, this is exactly why what I want you to do is go optimize it. I want you to go take a look at it. Does it have those trust factors, those authority factors? Does it tell the story of you and how you, as long as you feel comfortable putting that out there? But that's an underutilized page, in my opinion.
100%.
And you said it really beautifully. Is that small brands, I mean, where's the trust, right? How do they know who you are? And to take that time to write a very well-crafted About Us page is going to pay dividends, in the long run. And go back and update it too, because things change, right? The evolution of your business will change. You'll be 5 years in business, and maybe you want to talk about, how you, something that has happened over those 5 years that would help your, again, look in the mirror, or look into a mirror, or visualize your ideal customer or your buyer persona on the other end as you craft your About Us page. What's going to resonate with them?
I think it's a great place to secure a sale over a competitor. Yeah. So I know for me, if I'm looking to buy 2 separate products, and I know this doesn't cover all consumers, but for me, I like to buy local. I like to buy from companies who have a great backstory. I like to buy from small producers. If that is your target market, that can be the difference between getting the sale from the About page backstory and losing out to a competitor, especially when you're getting set up.
Yeah, that is well said. To the point of blogs, as part of your overall content strategy, this is probably one of the hardest parts, right? This is where I think everybody struggles, and imagine pre-ChatGPT, right? Nobody, you were doing everything, even I couldn't get in. I don't. Where do you go for inspiration, right? You were having to go on Google search. But it is important. Evergreen content, I will say, even more so if you can get that content, which is challenging for some brands, because if they are in the fashion world, how do they approach evergreen? I think as much as possible, if you can lean it or update. What about updating? Coming back and updating your content. How well does that play in, by the way, these days? Keeping your site, just your overall, not just blogs, but your overall site, keeping it fresh with content.
Yeah, you definitely do want to keep it updated. I'm not talking about every day, kind of it's once a quarter. Go in, kind of update a couple of pages. You may have opened up a bricks and mortar store, and kind of you can add that to the About page. Kind of you want to keep it up to date. With blogs, when the website is established and you have some analytics going on and you can see what is performing well, what's converting well, the lowest hanging fruit for a new content strategy year on year is to go and find those unicorn blog posts. And we call them unicorns because they're pretty rare on websites. And those are the ones that get high organic traffic and that convert really well. And go in and update them. If I have a website come in and I see that they have 10 blog posts that are performing really well, might be a little bit outdated, or kind of I can see some space where you can definitely really deep dive into a subject, I would recommend them to update that and to maximize it for lead gen. So, whether you're, giving a freebie away, or, kind of how to measure your own shoe size or whatever as a download to get them into an email campaign, whatever that looks like for your brand, I'd recommend that over new blogs any day of the week. Because you already have an established page. Google is recognizing it. It's obviously sending traffic. So how do you maximize getting conversions from that traffic? And yeah, a blog a month. Kind of you can add a new blog every month, and kind of that has traditionally been enough to kind of keep Google happy. Now I have some clients who blog once a week, twice a week, kind of, and that's what they need to keep their website fresh and keep their users engaged, and they're in quite competitive areas. So yeah, and again, we need to consider busy entrepreneurs. If you are trying to do this all yourself, try and batch blogs when you're in a quiet moment. If you actually have a quiet 3 hours on like a Saturday afternoon, and write as many blogs as possible, pre-schedule them, and just get as much use out of them as possible. And I'm a big fan of reusing content, and repurposing content. So if you have a great blog post, turn it into an email newsletter, turn it into social media posts, get the most out of your hard work, because not everybody's going to read every single blog, but hopefully at some point they'll see an ad, or kind of they'll sign up for your email newsletter, and then they'll go read the blog afterwards. So get the most out of your hard work.
Yeah, and I mean, to that, again, if we're saying that you have to be somewhat of a media company these days, how much content you have to create. If you can create one thing and turn it into a few things, fantastic, right? That hard work, that labor that you put into that, whether it be a blog content or whatever it is. I mean, we take our podcast and we turn it into a newsletter, we turn it into shorts, we turn it into LinkedIn posts. I mean, that's how media companies operate. They don't just make one thing and leave it in a corner over here. They make one thing and do a lot with it. So
yeah, absolutely. And that is a good use for AI, because you're not generating new content. You're saying, okay, take this blog post and write an email newsletter based around, kind of the top 3 points. And then you can go in and edit it afterwards. Always edit it. Always put your own spin on it. But yeah, like you can use AI to save you time. It's not great for creative work. Let's be honest. It doesn't have creativity. It doesn't have an imagination. It is AI. But it is great for turning your hard work into multiple pieces of media to consume.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, I mean, Abby, you probably sit down and think about this. What's the future look like for content as it relates to websites, and AI and human beings? Where do you see this going? I mean, if we had a crystal ball, I guess we'll put it on the table, and you can have your crystal ball moment here and see. What are your thoughts? Where does it go from here?
It's so difficult to guess. If you'd have asked me 2 years ago, when AI launched, people were saying, oh, copywriters will be out of work and the AI can do everything. And, kind of people were worried about, artists losing, kind of jobs and stuff. Mm. And it hasn't happened yet. Kind of there's always that space for human imagination and human creativity. I think going forward, it's going to be more of that. I think that people are going to get very tired very quickly of reading a blog post that starts, in today's modern world. It's just you're pretty much instantly,
yes, I've seen that many times. Yes,
yeah, instantly filter out, and people. I know I've said it a couple of times, but they crave that human interaction. And if you can see somebody that is really trying their best and creating genuinely useful content that is helping you, then I think that those companies are going to outperform the ones that are just kind of churning out AI content. I know kind of from my own real doom scrolling late at night, that kind of I see AI ads, and they've got that robotic voice. They've got the fake people that are trying to sell you stuff, and instantly I don't have any trust in that product. It could be the most amazing product in the world, but there's no human telling me about it. There's we still go on word of mouth over everything else. And that's why influencer marketing was so huge, because you get to know and like these people, and you trust their opinions on stuff, and yeah, they're paid to promote stuff, but it works for kind of general public. They think, oh, this is a great product because, the follower, the person that I've been following for the last 3 years promotes it. So I think there's going to be more of that, more human focused stuff. I think as AI gets more and more popular, it's going to get less and less trustworthy. And of course, then we've got the issue of AI hallucinations. So quoting itself and it being completely incorrect and just making stuff up as well. And then we're going to go down a wormhole of, kind of like misinformation and all this kind of stuff as well. I think people are going to be more picky with the media that they consume. And what does that mean for e-commerce founders? It means that you need to create human first content that is trustworthy, that is helpful, and maybe even a little bit entertaining.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, I think as I'll speak for myself in this case, when I'm reading content out there, I want to trust it, right? And I think it's pretty easy if you read it carefully, you'll probably be able to pick out whether it was, AI generated or not. There's some of those words that you mentioned that, you tend to see over and over again, but I want to trust the content I'm reading. So therefore, I feel the obligation to put out good content myself. So, hopefully that is how, we will all think. If you want good content, then you better be responsible and put out that great content, put out that human first content to your audience, because other than that, it's just going to, continue to get, we're not here to, bash all over, on AI. We clearly, use it in many ways, but, put out that responsible content and speak to your customers. They want to hear from you. They want to know you. They want to know you. I love that. Wow. Well, this has been fantastic. We like to always, it's very appropriate in this particular case because we always like to end our podcast by asking a question that is, again, very appropriate in this. And I'm just curious. You probably use AI to do certain things on a weekly basis, or is there something that you can think about that happened that when you were using AI that you just stopped and said, "Wow," you had a wow moment? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Do you know what? I had a wow moment, and it's not work related. My mum had an MRI recently, and she got the results from the report. And while you're waiting to, kind of hear from the doctor about plan of action and stuff, we were looking at these words that have like 20 syllables each, and we're not sure what they mean when they're all put together. But I put the report into ChatGPT, and obviously it is not a doctor, and it is not, kind of anything like that. But I just said, explain like I'm 5. Can you take this and just tell me exactly what this means in terms of, kind of what is wrong, kind of wrong with my mum, And it was just like, oh yeah, no, kind of she's got a bit of issue with her shoulder and, this kind of stuff. And I was just like, there are so many good uses for AI that can generally make people's lives better. And I think it could be such a powerful tool to really empower people to, understand what's going on and, kind of access stuff that they wouldn't be able to comprehend previously. Like, I'm not a doctor and I cannot understand, kind of certain words and stuff. I think and this is the basis of all online content for me, is it should open up people's worlds. And I think that, kind of AI has the power to do that, but it's how we choose to use it is where that lies, I think.
Wow, what a great example. And, yes, in our personal lives. And we've had, past guests talk about, having, struggles, in entrepreneurship, having those nights of, oh my God, what am I doing? And you going to AI to get help, help me, like take the wheel, show, tell me where I need to go with this. Am I doing the right thing? It's very interesting. How we are relying on it, and again, this is speaking, outside of, content. You specifically give an example of utilizing it to explain information better. And it's a tool. Let's face it, it is a tool. It should be nothing more than that. Human beings need tools. They need picks and axes and things like that to do the job better. This is a tool. So let's not let it get out of control here, and let's be the human in the loop and create human first content. But what a great example. I appreciate you sharing that. Fantastic. Wow. This has been, I love this. I hope that this spurs lots of comments. I want to hear people, I want to hear your, opinion about, human first content. I want to hear your opinion about AI. I want to hear those two worlds come together, because it is an important topic that we continue to discuss, and not just let this be a click, copy, paste situation. This is about developing strategies. This is about creating content that our readers, that our buyer personas are going to read and understand our brand and understand who we are. And that is what we want to create, right? Yeah. So very good. But, yeah. Well, Abby, I really appreciate you coming on and, providing this kind of information. And again, the copy that you, create, I always marvel at it. I look at it and say,
thank you.
How does she know? How does her team know about us better than we do? So, why don't you take a moment and let everybody know where they can find you and where they can find the Content Lab and how they can reach out to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the compliments. And I always say it's the biggest compliment when a client comes back and says, you sound more like me than I do. So fantastic. So you can find my website, www.thecontentlab.ie. We're based in Ireland, so it is a .ie. We also have a podcast that launched last month called Content Goodies Podcast. Yeah, it's just me talking about content to lovely people.
I love it. And is that where is that available? Is it on the site or on? Do you have it up on YouTube or someplace?
Yeah, it's on the site. It's on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast goodness. And yeah, you'll be able to find all details on the contentlab.ie.
Yeah, great. And yeah, you have a lot of resources on your site too. And I think I encourage everybody to go take a look, because, if you're struggling, if that cursor is blinking at you, and sure, if you need to go use a little ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you need to do, but also go and seek out the information. Actually read. Maybe this is an interesting concept here, people. We could all read. I'm challenging myself this year to do more reading and more writing. So
fantastic.
I think it's a great thing. Well, Abby, again, thank you so much for coming on the E-Commerce Revolution podcast. It's been a pleasure as always to speak with you, and I hope that things continue to grow. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an utter pleasure, as always.
Great. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for joining the E-Commerce Revolution podcast today. All right, that brings us to the end of another episode of the E-Commerce Revolution podcast. Don't forget to check out past episodes, which are all available on demand on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Ready to join the revolution? Become an exclusive part of our growing community of emerging e-commerce entrepreneurs at ecomrevolution.co. Until next time, see ya.